This man is named Jeffrey Epstein, a wealthy person. But behind the luxurious life of the billionaire, there is a dark secret that shook the public after the emergence of allegations of sexual crimes against minors. It all started with a report that came into the Palm Beach, Florida Police Department in March 2005. From this point on, Jeffrey Epstein's horrors and dark secrets are gradually uncovered. The question is, how did this heinous crime go undetected for so long? More importantly, are any further secrets yet to be revealed? These mysteries were investigated in a large-scale operation that included the FBI. In this video, we will look into who Jeffrey Epstein truly is. Before being involved in the scandal of child prostitution and sex charges, Jeffrey was known as a mysterious millionaire. He even received the title International Moneyman of Mystery from New York Magazine. Jeffrey Edward Epstein, born in 1953, grew up in a working-class area in Seagate, Brooklyn, New York City, and comes from a Jewish family. According to records, he completed his high school education at Lafayette High School in 1969 at the age of 16. He subsequently enrolled in advanced math classes at Cooper Union until September 1971, after which he moved to the Corrine Institute of Mathematical Science at New York University. Jeffrey focused on mathematical physiology at college, but he dropped out without earning a degree in June 1974. A few months later, Jeffrey began teaching physics and math to students at the Dalton School in Manhattan. It was a high-end private school for the children of the wealthy. Despite the fact that he lacked a teaching degree and qualifications, Donald Barr was rumored to have hired someone who did not satisfy the standard requirements. Jeffrey was well known for being a charming teacher at the school and treating his students like friends. According to some of his former students' testimonies, Jeffrey frequently engaged in inappropriate behavior toward his students, including flirting and showing inappropriate attention, rather than fostering a relationship between a teacher and student. Throughout his nearly 2 years of teaching, Jeffrey continued to do this while also attempting to establish connections with the students' parents. One of them was Alan Greenberg, the CEO of the Bear Stearns, a stock brokerage company that went bankrupt in 2008. Jeffrey was fired from Dalton School in June 1976 for poor performance. Yet there are suspicions that he was fired because of reports of mistreating certain female students. Thereafter, Alan extended an opportunity to Jeffrey to work for his company. The Bear Stearns were known to prey on intelligent, low-income men who desired to become wealthy quickly. He started as a junior assistant and rose to senior partner in just 4 years after being assigned to a specialized division that advised the wealthiest clients. Jeffrey quit the Bear Stearns in 1981, allegedly owing to securities regulation violations. Nonetheless, he stayed close to Alan and Jimmy Kane, the Bear Stearns' new CEO at the moment. He eventually established his own consulting company and was a major client of the Bear Stearns until the company went bankrupt. Jeffrey's company, Intercontinental Assets Group Inc., assisted his clients in recovering money stolen by fraudulent brokers and lawyers. Moreover, Jeffrey worked as a consultant to governments and affluent individuals to recover embezzled monies, but he also worked for customers who had embezzled funds. According to the testimony of several of his friends, Jeffrey previously claimed to be an intelligence operative, and in the 1980s he possessed an Austrian passport with his photo, but under a fictitious name. Jeffrey's passport lists him as a resident of Saudi Arabia. It may have something to do with the fact that one of his clients, Saudi businessman Adnan Khashoggi, is a middleman in the sale of American weaponry from Israel to Iran. Jeffrey traveled to several countries in Europe and Southwest Asia in the middle of the 1980s until he met Stephen Hoffenberg, who employed him as a consultant in 1987 for Towers Financial Corporation. This debt collection company bought out customers' debts from hospitals, banks, and telephone companies. Afterward, the two made plans to embezzle funds from several companies that they intended to take over through a Ponzi scheme. And their collaboration was eventually recorded as the largest Ponzi scheme in American history. After the crime was discovered, the Towers company was declared bankrupt in 1993. However, as Jeffrey had left the company in 1989, he was never successfully prosecuted for the massive fraud. As a result, only Stephen was brought to justice, even though he had testified that Jeffrey was involved. It is unknown whether Jeffrey received any funds from the scam. However, while still working for Stephen, Jeffrey established his own financial management company, Epstein and Company, in 1988. Jeffrey's company specializes in asset management for clients, but Jeffrey does not accept every client. He only targets clients with a net worth greater than $1 billion. All data about his clients is limited, and the only billionaire client known to the general public is Leslie Herbert Wexner, chairman and CEO of L Brands and Victoria's Secret. Jeffrey earns millions of dollars per month as Leslie Wexner's financial manager. Jeffrey's other sources of income include media investments, company management, and even investments in Israeli startup companies. The Israeli publication Haaretz claimed in 2015 that Jeffrey invested in the startup, reportedly Homeland Security. The startup has ties to the Israeli defense industry, which is run by former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, who also served as defense minister and IDF chief of staff. Jeffrey's business activities are truly sprawling, yet no one has ever discovered his actual net worth. Some argue that Jeffrey is not a billionaire, and that his wealth is not as much as it is thought to be. However, federal prosecutors in 2019 indicated that Jeffrey is immensely affluent, with assets worth at least $500 million and an annual income of more than $10 million. Furthermore, current investigations reveal that Jeffrey has many financial accounts in offshore tax-free countries worth millions of dollars, and the majority of his fortune is essentially untraceable, including its source. After receiving a report in 2005, the Palm Beach police began a 13-month secret investigation into Jeffrey. In 2005 and 2006, Jeffrey's Palm Beach home was canvassed. The raid resulted in discovering 2 concealed cameras in the residence and all of Jeffrey's property. Likewise, to his opulent mansion in New York and private island, police officers believe that the covert cameras were purposefully set up to capture minors having sex with notable people who visited his residence. Jeffrey allegedly threatened to release the immoral recordings with the intention of blackmailing them. Jeffrey allegedly provided the girls he ensnared in a prostitution ring to prominent people so they could obtain and exploit the recordings. The discoveries prompted an even larger probe by the FBI. The search of Jeffrey's property revealed not only hidden cameras, but also images of girls who had visited the house. The police visited with them and interrogated them for investigation purposes. According to the FBI report, 34 minors were hired to work part-time at Jeffrey's house, but they had no idea that their employment would result in abuse. There was a trap with bait between $200 and $300, which was really large for kids their age. The victims' admissions have given investigators the necessary information to build a strong case against Jeffrey for child prostitution and sexual abuse. Over 80 people were his victims in the end. Not all were Americans. A large number had been flown in from South America, Europe, and former Soviet countries. Typically, they came from modeling agencies. One of them is Jean-Luc Brunel. The Palm Beach Police Department arrested Jeffrey for child prostitution on July 27, 2006, following due process. He was arrested and held at the Palm Beach County Jail before being released on a $3,000 bail. Defense counsel Roy Black, Gerald Lefcourt, Harvard Law School professor Alan Dershowitz, former United States Attorney General Ken Starr, and linguist Steven Pinker assisted Jeffrey in being acquitted of the allegations. As the case heated up, the FBI began its own investigation in July 2006, called Operation Leap Year, which resulted in a 53-page indictment in June 2007. That should have been enough to land Jeffrey in prison, but then federal prosecutor Alexander Costa consented to a plea deal brokered by Alan Dershowitz, which granted Jeffrey immunity from all federal criminal charges. The approval of the plea agreement effectively ended the ongoing FBI investigation into whether there were further victims and other influential people involved in Jeffrey Epstein's sex crimes. Costa was told Jeffrey belonged to intelligence and demanded to be left alone, which led to the plea deal. In exchange, Jeffrey agreed to plead guilty in Florida state court to 2 felony prostitution counts. serve 18 months in jail, register as a sex offender, and make reparations to the FBI-identified victims. Jeffrey was given an 18-month prison sentence on June 30th, 2008, after entering a guilty plea to charges of child prostitution. But apparently the prison was not tormented for Jeffrey because, according to reports, his cell door was left unlocked, and he had access to a lawyer's room with a television expressly placed for him. On July 22, 2009, Jeffrey was released and was subject to a year of house arrest probation that ended in August 2010. While on probation, Jeffrey was permitted to use his company plane for extensive interstate travel. The sexual predator was also allowed to roam Palm Beach, but his sex offender label remained. He is still listed with the state of New York as a Level 3 sex offender, which means he is at a high risk of reoffending, a label that will follow him throughout his life. The judge reiterated in court that Jeffrey must report to the New York Police Department every 90 days. Regrettably, the rules were never followed, and Jeffrey never reported them once. The case infuriated the public, who believed that Jeffrey had received such leniency that even the Palm Beach police chief had the nerve to accuse the state of giving him special treatment. Cancel culture started working. After the allegations against Jeffrey were made public, numerous people and institutions returned the donations they had received from him. In fact, many names were brought into this case, including Donald Trump, who was accused alongside Jeffrey of joint abuse. The two had been friends for a long time, and J.P. Morgan Chase Bank was even named in a civil case filed by the Virgin Islands government after it was accused of facilitating, maintaining, and hiding a human trafficking network operated by Jeffrey Epstein. This abuse case really shook up the world of high society at the time. The turmoil continued until Jeffrey was arrested on sex trafficking charges by the FBI and NYPD at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey on July 6, 2019. He was imprisoned again at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City. According to witnesses, around a dozen FBI agents broke open the door to his Manhattan townhouse with a search warrant. Searches of his townhouse turned up thousands of sexually provocative photos of nude women, along with evidence of sex trafficking. Some of the photos were found to be of underage girls. The locked safe also contained $70,000 in cash, 48 diamonds, and a forged Austrian passport that had expired in 1987. The passport contains several entrance and exit stamps, including stamps indicating that it was used to enter France, Spain, the United Kingdom, and Saudi Arabia in the 1980s. It confirms the rumors about his role as an intelligence agent. Thus, he looks to be immune to the law, and many officials are assisting him. Some journalists claim that Jeffrey surreptitiously recorded and spied on prominent people, gathering their immoral material in order to blackmail and exploit them. Virginia Giuffre, one of Jeffrey's victims, accused him of being an intelligence asset and a spy who carried out blackmail operations. William J. Byrne, a former CIA director and diplomat, met with Jeffrey 3 times, but no critical information was disclosed to the public. Thus, there has not been much hard evidence up to this point that Jeffrey was a real intelligence agent. Prosecutors in the Southern District of New York accused him on July 8, 2019, of engaging in the trafficking of sex and plotting to sex traffic minors. Dozens of girls were brought to Jeffrey's opulent estate for sex, according to the grand jury indictment. In the end, Jeffrey stayed behind bars at the Metropolitan Correctional Center. On July 23, 2019, Jeffrey was discovered injured and semi-conscious at 1:30 a.m. on the floor of his cell with marks on his neck. It is probable that Jeffrey attempted suicide, but the wound felt strange that officers suspected an attack by another inmate possibly had been staged. Following the incident, Jeffrey was placed under supervision, and 6 days later, on July 29, 2019, he was removed from monitoring and transferred to a special cell unit with other inmates. Some of Jeffrey's close colleagues reported that his mental health was good and he had a spirit of life. Therefore, there was no indication that he would intentionally commit suicide. On August 9, 2019, Jeffrey's cellmate was unexpectedly transferred. Jeffrey was discovered not to have been checked regularly, and officers missed their checking duties for 3 hours due to sleep, resulting in the discovery of fraudulent checking records. That night, the 2 CCTV cameras in front of his cell unexpectedly failed. Jeffrey was discovered dead in his own cell the following morning, around 6:30 a.m. on August 10, 2019. The 2 guards who discovered him performed life-saving efforts, activated the alarm, summoned emergency personnel, and transported Jeffrey to the hospital. Unfortunately, his life was not saved. Authorities performed an autopsy on August 11, 2019, the day he was declared deceased. There were initial suspicions that Jeffrey had thrown himself violently from the top bunk in the cell, as each cell does have a bunk bed. However, the injuries and damage Jeffrey sustained were more like cloth strangulation. The autopsy results also revealed that Jeffrey had multiple neck fractures, including the hyoid bone. In some cases, the fracture of the hyoid bone can be caused by a hanging neck, but it is also commonly found in victims of murder by strangulation. On August 16, 2019, however, following an exhaustive autopsy, New York City medical examiner Barbara Sampson declared that Jeffrey's death was suicide. Dissatisfied with the conclusions reached by medical experts and the Prison Bureau, Jeffrey's defense lawyer eventually launched an independent investigation to determine the cause of his death. The independent inquiry was not conducted simply to defend his client. However, his lawyer discovered flaws in the official investigation and evidence that Jeffrey's death was most likely a homicide. A pathologist from Jeffrey's defense team, Michael Baden, saw the autopsy and reported that the cervical fractures and other injuries Jeffrey had were extremely unusual for hanging cases, and more frequently, the result of strangulation in homicides. Despite further FBI investigations and inquiries regarding Jeffrey's death, it has yet to be determined whether his death was the result of murder or not. The FBI subsequently charged only the 2 officers who were assigned to monitor Jeffrey. They were charged with negligence and fraud for forging records. The billionaire's demise has raised questions among the public. There are speculations that Jeffrey faked his death to avoid prosecution. The rumor is realistic and possible, given Jeffrey's fortune, which would allow him to do so. Or was his death the result of a planned murder committed by someone who did not want his scandal to be made public? Considering that Jeffrey might still be concealing strong evidence of prominent figures' involvement that could surprise the public.